Hello. 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 All right, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Let's get right into today's video. So, I will be talking about the 2024 Republican primary. And uh, it really is our current political circus. And I say that for many reasons. Mostly that there's no way in hell that Trump is going to lose. And second of all, I mean, the candidates we have to watch, they're kind of funny people. We have Chris Christie, Nikki Haley, some of the most entertaining folks we have in politics. It seems that a lot of things those two individuals in particular say really entertain me. Anyways, let's get back to the video. This will be a little bit more opinionated than my typical video, simply because, there's these are just some awful candidates that are here. But yeah, let's get right into it. So here is really the roster we have for the Republican primary. We have Asa Hutchinson, which is a joke. I can add right now that I think a relative of his, I know his name had the last name Hutchinson, was actually arrested for corruption charges, and not good for the Asa Hutchinson family. He's the former governor of Arkansas, not necessarily the most representative of the Arkansas people. You know, he's typically more liberal, and you can think of that what you will, but in Arkansas, they tend to go for more conservative people, which is why we have Sarah Huckabee Sanders as the current governor. But yeah, I'm not talking about him as the polls say he's, 0.5% insignificant. But yeah, let's get into the real meat of this video. We have Chris Christie, which in my friend group, he is really a joke candidate. Let's face it, he's probably in it for the free food. He's entire rhetoric of his campaign is, "Oh, Trump bad, we can't vote for Trump," which is quite honestly really, really silly because the majority of the Republican base is on Trump's side. If you're not on Trump's side, you're probably supporting one of the alternatives to Trump. Take that what you will, or you're, a billionaire who's going out there and giving, 1% of your income to Nikki Haley, which, isn't that much, but that's still around $1 million. So Chris Christie is quite hilarious. As I've said before, he's a joke among my friend group. I mean, look at this guy. He's the former governor of New Jersey, which for a Republican winning a New Jersey governor election, not the worst, not actually, that's kind of impressive. That was 2010. We are in a different political environment since then, a far more partisan one. If someone like Jack Ciattarelli won New Jersey governorship, that's quite impressive. He would be on the level of Glenn Youngkin. Chris Christie is not a Glenn Youngkin, nor is he a Jack Ciattarelli. Uh, he left office with a 70% disapproval rating. Because of Bridgegate, which basically is where some Republican hackers that were in his administration decided to slow and hack into the traffic lights to slow the traffic to make that Trenton, New Jersey government mayor unpopular, which is really quite a silly premise in itself and left him quite disgraceful legacy going into his retirement from retirement from that office. But yeah, not the biggest Chris Christie guy, as you can tell. Still, though, he has no chance at winning. And if I was him, I'd probably drop out by now. 2.5% as a never Trumper Republican who is salty that Trump didn't give you a job. Yeah, no, no, no. Get out of here. No more Chris Christie. Anyways, let's go to the guy in fourth place. And I hold a lot more respect towards this guy. I'm going to be less partisan in my assertion of him. He is a businessman from Ohio. He's not doing too good, but he is the alternative to Trump. And when Trump's in the race, it doesn't really leave you much room to get voters or to rise in the polls. I mean, there's a little sprout here where he was up by 10%. This is a different time, though. It's not really applying to the current political situation we have in December of 2023, which, I think Vivek Ramaswamy, decent candidate in his own right. I don't think he ever really was in it to win it. I think if he could win, or if this was, going to be more of an upward trend, I think, he would have took it seriously. And I'm not saying he's not taking it seriously, but he really is just in it to get his name out there, which isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. I mean, he is going to get his name out there, and I don't think this is the end of his political career by any stretch of the imagination. He could serve in the Trump administration. If Trump is elected, he could do a lot of things. He'd go on to run for Ohio senator or Ohio governor, and to that degree, I don't think he would even do that bad of a job. I mean, he has went out there and said his fair share of, out of context politics, but when you look at the context of them, not bad. Anyways, let's move to my least favorite candidate of the entire 2024 roster, being former Governor Nikki Haley. Complete joke, guys. Complete, utter joke. Horrible, 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 horrible candidate. Her entire pathos of her campaign, that is to say, her rhetoric, is, guys, we need to go to war right now. Think of it like Alex Jones. I want war. I want war. And the second biggest policy thing I can point out of her is her wanting to tie an ID and the government to recognize every single person that is on social media, which is quite ridiculous. I mean, one large part of social media presence is, there's a certain degree of anonymity. You don't have to necessarily, be whatever your full name is. You can be, whatever you want. And that probably does abridge the First Amendment, I suspect, if in an alternative reality where Nikki Haley somehow beats out Donald Trump and somehow narrowly beats out Biden, Republicans control Congress, or maybe Democrats will help her with it, it passes, that probably will be shut down by the Supreme Court. But nonetheless, she's really a joke. And let's look into her electoral history, guys. So, Nikki Haley. I should have mentioned she's a former UN ambassador, but, I mean, warmonger, UN ambassador, potato patata. Anyway, her electoral history is kind of sad. So, up here, yeah, it's okay. I mean, obscure person from South Carolina House District, not the worst thing in the world. But when we look at the governor election, 2010 was a red wave year. What happened? She isn't necessarily the most popular person with the GOP voter base. South Carolina is, a staunchly Republican state, and I don't think that's going to change in the next 10 years of politics. Could, but probably won't. And here she is underperforming the national ticket by about 10, 15, 16 points. Not necessarily sure. It's something around those numbers. Anyway, here she is barely winning by like 5 or 6 points in 2010, a red wave year. And yeah, 2014 was a rematch. And typically rematches don't bolster the same amount of support as the original election. Look at the Georgia governor race last year. Stacey Abrams, she didn't do as well as she did in 2018 because, if you lose an election once, it doesn't look the best on your record. People aren't going to go out there and vote for you again. And Nikki Haley still did not what she should have been as an incumbent in a red wave year, being 2014. But, yeah, she's an unviable and not really an electable candidate. Like, unless you're a wine mom Republican or a country club Republican or a part of the GOP donor class who are throwing a lot of your income at her to try and knock down Donald Trump, which is not going to happen. A little humiliating. I don't think there's going to be much leeway in her winning. But yeah. So I'm going to try and tone down the opinionatedness. I just really don't like Chris Christie or Nikki Haley. I think Nikki Haley's an active threat, and I will end my conclusion on addressing her with really a quote, which I'll put up on screen or I'll put in the description, which is essentially, America needs to stop thinking it's September 10th and act like it's September 12th, which really implies a lot of warmongering and a lot of destruction and unnecessary killing of people in third world countries, which we have seen under the Bush administration, which she was an active supporter of. Anyway, Ron DeSantis. Let's try and pull it back up from the dooming and glooming. I didn't really doom and gloom about Vivek Ramaswamy, but let's pull it up a little bit. Now, that's not that they're saying I support Ron DeSantis, but he's, in my opinion, probably a far better person to get the ticket to Nikki Haley or Chris. Sorry about that, folks. It cut off on me. Anyways, let's get back into this. So, Ron DeSantis, interesting fella, funny guy, I will say. Wearing his high heels on the campaign trail, it gives me a little bit of joy. He's down there in second place, which second place, that's not bad. But when you see this wide of a gap, I don't know about that one, guys. Anyway, so Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, I don't think he is as bad as the media portrays him as. He is, again, the alternative to Trump, and when you're the alternative to Trump, there isn't really much leeway to pick up votes when Trump's in the race. I don't think it takes a genius or Einstein to figure that out, but it is what it is. And I don't think he probably should have ran in this election. It just severely hurt his political career. I mean, he looks like a traitor to the Trump base and to the Trump administration, and he would have been better to run in 2028, but it is what it is. He did see some donor support before he fell off, and let's say after March to where he is now, from about 30s, low 30s, all the way down to 12%. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I will say that the big great red state blue state debate, I do think he won the debate against Gavin Newsom. Not necessarily saying much. Ron DeSantis has been known by political people like us as not necessarily being the best debater, but him going out there and beating Gavin Newsom is not going to help him in the race, but it does make his policies look more competent against Gavin Newsom. Throughout many points of the debate, I do think Ron DeSantis did own Gavin Newsom. But that's regardless of the point, and this is regardless of the race, and to a certain degree, that's regardless of the videos. So let's get back in here from my hot take on that. So yeah, I don't think Ron DeSantis is going to win. Not necessarily the worst governor in the world. He's done his fair share of good things, like protecting the environment or, not being like California. But both of those things aren't saying much. It's just the bare minimum I would expect out of a politician. And I could talk about Trump. I've already talked about how I think he's going to win the primary hands down. And let's not make this a Trump policy video or my 2 cents on Trump. That can be saved for another day. Anyways, so let's look at the polls. And let's make my, Iowa caucus prediction. Although I have previously stated that I think Trump is going to win. He's up here by, around the high 20s against every single Republican in the general polling aggregate, about 29 points according to 270 to win, which is the same source different one. But this is, one of the sources I use quite often. 538 is 26.2, which is the one I'm using. Anyway, so let's just give my 2 cents. I think Trump is going to get about, let's just go with, 45%. I really think worst case Donald Trump does only win it by like 2015 if the Nikki Haley donor dollars goes through, which unlikely that it happens. Could it happen? Absolutely. Politics especially being a poli-sci guy like I am, you can't necessarily put a lot of faith into what will happen. But nonetheless, we still got to make these predictions. Ron DeSantis has been endorsed by every single person in Iowa that has any name recognition. He's still not pulling it through in the state. Let's see where he's at right here. He's around 20%. I think that Kim Gardner, I believe it's Kim Gardner. No, I'm thinking of someone else. Kim Reynolds? Yeah, Kim Reynolds. I think that Kim Reynolds' endorsement does help him a little bit more than it will help him in any other state throughout the process. I'll be nice. I'll give him 20% of the votes, kind of a salute to his possibly dead political career after his decision to run. Nikki Haley, I hate to do this. She's probably going to get around third. I'll give her around, 15% seems to be reasonable. Vivek Ramaswamy around 10% or 5%. We'll see where we're at because I think I'll give him 5%. Chris Christie, I'll be nice. I've bashed on him too much. I'll give the rest to Trump. I don't know. I'll give him 50%. Who could probably around that. Nikki Haley, she gets a little bit more support. Ron DeSantis takes the rest of the undecided voters because of his endorsements, and this is what you're left. A rough estimate of how the first caucus will go. Trump will be in there and he will lead, and he will probably go on to win. I think New Hampshire's up next. A bit more of a not as conservative state, a little more. Trump isn't necessarily the appeal for the voter base there, but at the end of the day, I do think he will take New Hampshire. I'm not going to do a thing of it. Let's just around 50% relative to the polls are saying for the rest of them. Yeah. I think Nikki Haley would probably do better in this. And when it comes to South Carolina, that's probably going to be his best state. He hasn't been out there actively campaigning in South Carolina. And interestingly enough, South Carolina is Nikki Haley's home state. I don't know what she's doing letting him. Like, there's no chance she wins South Carolina, even being her home state. Really is quite sad that, people think she's going to win it. Well, I don't know anyone, but people who would think that. But yeah, let's give him around 60%. And you see by here, he's going to have such a lead by then. A lot of people are going to start dropping out. Probably Chris Christie remains in there a little more for the food. Ron DeSantis, when we get to Super Tuesday, he's probably going to weigh his options. Same thing with Vic Ramaswamy. Nikki Haley, she might try and think she's going to bolster a lot of the alternative Trump vote, but that's probably not going to happen. If you're a Ron DeSantis or a Nikki Haley, you're not voting for, a Ron DeSantis supporter of Vic Ramaswamy. Your second option is not Nikki Haley. It's probably Donald Trump or one of the people I've mentioned along those lines. But yeah, it's my current 2024 Republican primary video. I do hope you enjoy. Please leave what you think in the comments. We'll see what I can do to interact with you and talk with you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I shall see you guys next time.